Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, my dad, Mitch McMahon, and my aunt, Lori Summerfield.
In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context as to what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time that he wrote these.
In this episode, Bruce describes his first few days at Merced Army Air Base flying the Vulture BT-13 Valiant. We also talk about 1942 pop culture, the scrap metal drive in Lowell, and Bruce's injured finger.
Big episode today. We have to start, though, with corrections and additions, and we have our regular guest, Dale Croft, here with a correction to kick us off. So welcome, Dale.
Hello again. I got a correction. I said last week when I talked about Sequoia National Park and the highest mountain in the lower 48 states, I said Mount McKinley, which is in Alaska.
Yeah.
It's not in the lower 48 states. Why I said that, maybe because it was of the hot, humid weather here, and we were I was thinking of a place nice and cool. Anyway, it's Mount Whitney. So the tallest mountain in the lower 48 states is Mount Whitney. I also have an interesting factoid we talked about last week when we were talking about rationing of tires. And we talked about the 75 tons of rubber that is needed to make a battleship. Well, since Bruce flew a B-17, I found a factoid.
Oh.
It takes 1,285 pounds of rubber to make a B-17 bomber.
Wow.
Okay. So they needed to save those tires on the road trip.
My goodness. Yeah.
Makes sense. Wow. Yeah, as far as we know, Bruce did not make it to Alaska in the war. So, yeah, it's a good thing we correct that. Dad, Aunt Lori, what else? Anything else we need to add?
My cousin Annette said I referred to Ed Reynolds as Dad's cousin. Of course, he's his brother-in-law, so apologies for that.
There you go. I don't have any.
There's lots of cousins. It's okay.
Yeah.
You were
Lots of cousins.
Lori was perfect last week?
Well, I wasn't perfect, but I just didn't. It takes me a little bit longer to catch my mistakes.
Well, remember that if any listeners have a correction or additions for us, more information, please comment, message us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We'll add you in. We'll rectify it in a future episode. So we always want to make sure we're getting things right. So in our last episode, we talked about how Frank, Lotta, and Roger came out to Rankin Field in California to visit Bruce. And where we last left things, the letters had stopped for a little while, actually, because Bruce was with his family and had no reason to write back home when they're all together. So when they pick back up again, Bruce has actually moved on. He's not at Rankin Field anymore. He's now at the Merced Army Air Base in Merced, California. Dale, what can you tell us about Merced Army Air Base?
Well, the Merced Army Airfield, now is known as Castle Field, was important because it was a basic pilot training base for the U.S. Army during World War II. The base was part of the 30,000 pilot training program and trained many pilots and crews, including the WASP, the Women's Air Service Pilots. The U.S. Army chose the location in 1940 because California's weather, open spaces, railroad connections, and access to the ocean made it ideal for training pilots and armored vehicle operators. The airfield opened as the Army Air Force Base Flying School on September 20th, 1941. In 1942, the airfield was renamed the Merced Army Flying School, and in May 1942, it became the Merced Airfield as part of the Western Flying Training Command. The most common planes to land and take off at Merced Army Airfield were the Vulture B-13 Valiant and the B-15 Valiant. Cadets trained for 8 hours a day at these fields. The facility was renamed Castle Air Force Base on January 3, 1948, as part of the establishment of the United States Air Force as a separate military service. Now, you wonder why it was renamed Castle Field. Castle is named for the Brigadier General Frederick W. Castle, who died on December 24, 1944, flying his 30th bombing mission, just like Bruce flew 30. Wow. He died leading an armada of 2,000, listen to this, 2,000 B-17s on a strike against German airfields. On the way to the target, an engine failure over Liège, Belgium, I guess, caused his bomber to fall behind, where it was attacked by Germans and caught fire. He ordered his men to bail out, but he stayed alone on the controls of the flaming flying fortress until it crashed. The entire crew, except General Castle and one airman killed before the bailout order, survived. General Castle received a Medal of Honor for his bravery. So
Also, he
that's
survived the
I thought that was kind of neat too. The
Okay.
30th mission, he flew.
Oh, okay.
Bruce flew 30 missions.
He didn't survive,
actually
but
died
his
from
crew did.
38.
Oh, his crew survived. Okay.
Yeah, that's just
So-
crazy.
There were 2,000 ships?
That's
Two-
what
2,000
the
B-17s in the air?
research
Wow.
showed. He died leading an armada of 2,000 B-17s. That's,
Oh my gosh.
I wonder if that's a
Typo?
lot of B-17s in the air.
Goodness. Wow.
Okay.
But if they're going against a bunch of German airfields, you know, the Messerschmitts or whatever, they come up off the ground. I don't know. Anyway, that's what the research said.
Well, of course, Bruce wrote to his family about what Merced was like, this new place, and he had to check in with them after they got back from their trip. So, in his own words,
Wednesday, dear folks, we arrived here this morning and we've been running around all day getting settled, issued flight clothes, ground school equipment, arranged into flights, lectures, drills, etc. This is strictly an Army post. Cigarettes are 10 cents a pack. Food is Army food, better than the food at Rankin. We live in 4-man rooms and the post has about 3,000 men on it. Most of these 3,000 are enlisted men, as it takes a large personnel to keep the ships up and keep things running. One good thing about this post is that it has a Catholic church. If I'm confined at any time, I'll still be able to get to Mass without leaving the post. It's also much better for everyone in camp to have a chaplain. We made the trip in Greyhound buses last night we stayed at the hotel in Merced and came out here this morning by Army trucks. The field is located about 6 miles north of the city. This country is all very flat, and I miss the mountains in the background. I found out that we'll start to fly probably Thursday morning. I can hardly wait to get into one of those BT babies. Well, this isn't a very long letter. I'll do better tomorrow or next day. All my love, your loving son, J. Bruce. P.S. Have my address changed for the ledger, and you can tell the rest of my change in address, too.
he's got to have that ledger, making sure, keeping up on the local gossip.
Yeah.
So these BT babies he's referring to are exactly what Dale said, the Vulture BT-13 Valiant. So Dale, can you tell us a little bit more about these planes specifically? Why is Bruce so excited to fly these?
Well, yeah, because they were, a very fast and powerful plane, which had a lot of power. So he was excited to get it. The Vultee was the basic trainer most widely used by the United States Army Air Forces during World War II. It represented the second of 3 stages of pilot training: primary, basic, and advanced. Compared with the primary trainers in use at the time, it was considerably more complex. It possessed a more powerful engine. It was faster and heavier than the primary trainers. It had landing flaps and 2-position variable pitch prop propeller. And flying the B-13 required that the student communicate with ground personnel via a 2-way radio. The B-13 earned the nickname Vibrator for reasons that are unclear. It had a tendency to shake quite violently as it approached its stall speed.
That's pretty
The canopy
clear. That sounds pretty clear to me.
the canopy vibrated during more challenging maneuvers. On takeoff, the B-13 would cause windows and buildings on the ground to vibrate, and at high pitch, the propeller had an irritating vibration. Training for new pilots consisted of 4 9-week phases. The first phase of training was conducted in the classroom. The second through 4th phases consisted of cockpit flying experience, with each phase being progressively more challenging than the last, and each phase introduced the pilot candidate to more challenging and sophisticated aircraft. The phases were respectively named primary, basic, and advanced. The Boeing Stearman P-17 or the Fairchild PT-19 was used for primary training. The Vultee PT-13 was commonly used for basic training. And when Bruce moves on to advanced training, he'll be flying an AT-6, which was used for advanced. I don't know what an AT-6 is, but we will find out.
We'll get there. So yeah, he did his primary at Rankin. That's where he just left. So now he's at basic,
Basic.
here at Merced, and we'll get to
With a
advanced
BT
training
baby.
with the BT babies. Yeah.
I feel like I've seen movies where the steering has been shaking, like vibrating. But that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, on October 3rd, 1942, Bruce continued to talk about his life at Merced and his experience finally getting up in the BT-13. So, Dad, we can take this one in his own words.
Saturday. Dear folks, I've just come back from noon mess and I have 20 minutes before my first class, so I'll try to dash off a few lines. We alternate flying mornings and classes in the afternoon each day. The courses are about the same as we have been talking: code, meteorology, navigation. Our code is important now, as all signals, communication, etc. are carried on by radio with the ground, and we also have an interplane system. Today was our first ride in the new BT. They are the same as you saw at the field south of Tulare. There are about 150 ships on the field, and it sure is a noisy place. First couple of nights here, I couldn't sleep because the ships were taking off all night, but now I've become used to it. This field being all Army is much better than Rankin. Everything is so much cheaper. We don't get off Wednesday nights, and our weekend pass has been shortened to 24 hours, but I don't mind. It's a good thing you took my camera home. It's court-martial if you have one in your possession here. They're not going to have any sabotage if they can help it. There is some talk of it around here. I think I'll go up to Frisco tonight. It's not too far from here and not considered out of bounds. Did you enjoy the bridge? I'm so glad you could go home that way. Frisco is certainly worth seeing. I'm running out of time, so I'll close. All of my love and prayers, J. Bruce. P.S. Did Raj get tires for driving to GR? Tell him I'd like to get some here if he wants me to.
The tires again. I also think now we have an answer about why his friend's camera was stolen at the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, I think we were right in saying they were very cautious about sabotage, because clearly he's not even allowed to have a camera here
Right.
in Merced. So, and we know Bruce loved to take pictures, which is why we have so many. So by October 11th, it seems that Bruce has moved on to instrument flying, and he describes that for his family in his own words.
We are now flying instrument flight, and it's a real job. Every day I get an hour in the Link Trainer. As you already know, it's a machine that gives you all conditions of actual flying without leaving the ground. All the time you are under a hood, and you sit inside gluing your eyes to the controls, making turns to the right and to the left as the instructor directs you by telephone. These airplanes are really great ships to fly. They're fast and they're very agreeable to the controls. Land like a basket of eggs with their flaps. Each ship is equipped with all instruments for blind flying. In about another couple or 3 weeks, we'll be flying night formations. Though it sounds more dangerous, night flying isn't dangerous if you keep your eyes open. Me, I'm developing a pair of eyes in the back of my head. I'll bet when I get home, you'll notice my neck is inches longer and that I won't have to turn around to see behind me.
He's such a funny sense of humor. I mean, I think I can guess, but Dale, what can you tell us about blind flying? I think I could guess what it is, but let's hear the official.
Well, Bruce kind of described it a little bit, but I'll add a little more details here. To fly blind is to fly the airplane using only instruments. It would be used in circumstances where visual flight rules, VFR, would not be desirable or possible, such as during night training, which he will be talking about in later letters, and unclear weather conditions. A blind flying panel typically features an arrangement of 6 key flight instruments: an airspeed indicator, an artificial horizon, an altimeter, a rate of climb indicator, a directional gyro, and turn and slip indicator. Around the time of the Second World War, the blind flying panel was a standard piece of cockpit equipment that was installed on the majority of the aircraft. Although Army Air Force's aviation cadets flew various trainer aircraft, virtually all took blind flying instruction in a Link Trainer, also known as the Blue Box.
So they'd get in this box and it would like a flight simulator?
I'll get into that in a minute.
Okay, all right, we'll talk about
A Link
it.
Trainer is the airman's cockpit, and on the ground, beneath its hood, he or she learns to navigate by instruments and is used as a primary training aid for aviation cadets. So they would climb into this blue box, and inside the top would come down. And the movement of the trainer is accomplished by vacuum-operated bellows. controlled by valves connected to the control wheel or stick and rudder pedals. As an instructor sat at the desk and transmitted radio messages, which the student in the link heard through his earphones. Inside the cockpit, the student relied on his instruments to fly the link through various maneuvers, while his navigational course was traced on a map on the desk by the three-wheeled crab.
Oh.
Slipstream simulators gave the controls the feeling of air passing over control surfaces, and a rough air generator added additional realism during the flight.
So this thing would
The
shake?
trainers were
Oh my God.
realistic enough that a humorous but unlikely story circulated that one student told by his instructor that he had run out of fuel on the night flight, broke his ankle when he leaped from the trainer as though parachuting to safety.
So it's so realistic. Someone tried to drop out of it.
And I will have some visual on our YouTube video of the blue box and the 6 instruments. There was a control panel inside with the 6 instruments. So I found some really cool visual things to add to our video production of the link trainer and the blue box.
He mentions the link trainer a few more times. So when you hear that, and then we can picture this blue box he's in. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, on October 15th, he writes about flying with an instructor. So in his own words.
Nothing much happened with the exception of flying, with the exception of changing into our winter uniforms effective today. Flying is very interesting. We're now practicing flying under the hood on instruments. The instructor sits in the front cockpit and sees that you don't knock off any church steeples. In about 2 more weeks, we'll be flying nights. The food is still exceptionally good, and our barracks are very comfortable. Ground school is getting tough, but it isn't hard for me. I've had all the navigation and meteorology they teach here. In 3 navigation exams, I received 85, 100, 95. So I guess I won't worry about finding my way around. We had meteorology tests yesterday. I'm sure I received a good grade on it.
Yeah. So with the instructor and talking about knocking off church steeples, that would be real flying, right? But with an instructor, not the box.
Right.
And a
Okay.
BT baby
Up in the plane.
with more
Okay.
speed.
So sometimes he's blind flying in the link trainer, and sometimes he's actually out in a plane with the instructor.
Yep.
So, all right.
I do have a memory about Dad bringing us outside when I was little during storms to look at the cloud formations. So meteorology, he must have, little did I know that's where his training had
Oh.
come.
Yeah, that he had studied that.
He'd
Well, that
studied
makes sense.
Yeah, he
Okay.
really liked the storm clouds. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. All right, well, now it's time for our segment where we talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell when Bruce wrote these letters. So these letters kind of take place in October 1942. So let's start with some 1942 pop culture. In a letter from October 18th, 1942, Bruce mentions that he got a 24-hour pass that he mentioned before to go out in Merced, and he hit up the town. So in his own words.
We were given a 24-hour pass Friday at 6. 3 of us fellows went into Merced and got a room at this hotel. We fooled around for a while at the USO dance, and I went to bed at 11:30. Guess I'm getting old. Yesterday we window shopped, discussed civilians, and then went to a matinee. It was a Joe E. Brown picture, but even that didn't prevent my enjoying it. If you get a loogie seat ticket, you can smoke. Can you imagine sitting in a show and smoking? Seems strange, but all the big theaters out here have them. My flying is going okay, and I'm enjoying instrument flying very much. Might make a bi-engine yet. I'm scheduled for an hour of link trainer, so I'll have to close. So long, all my love, your loving son, J. Bruce. P.S. Saw on the ledger where Mrs. F.J. won high honors at bridge. Nice going. Keep setting them, and I'll keep flying them.
So that this hotel is referring to the Hotel Tioga, I think. Tioga. He's writing the letter on the hotel stationery, and then he draws an arrow to the hotel name. So when he writes this hotel, and then he writes like the little arrow that points to it. So it's those little details in Bruce's letters that just, I think, really make these fun to look at when I'm doing this. So you can see these on the Lowell Historical Museum website when you look at the actual letters. So we'll try to direct you to some of those little details. But I actually did some research here on who Joe E. Brown was. because he said he went to a Joey Brown movie and he got to smoke in the theater, which I did a little research. Joey Brown was a vaudeville-style actor who made a lot of popular movies in the late 1930s. And according to Wikipedia, my main source here, he was perhaps a little dated, a little uncool by 1942, which might explain why Bruce was like not super excited to see the movie, but he did like it despite it being a Joey Brown movie.
Well, it was probably, you could have just asked your dad about Joey Brown, because
Oh.
I remember him from It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Oh, okay. All right.
And he was a caricature. Disney
Yeah. He had like a big
created,
mouth.
yes, his big mouth.
Yeah.
And I think his movies were maybe more childish. They were
Hokey.
slapstick. It was
Hokey,
more
yeah.
broad humor, so probably
okay.
wasn't as sophisticated as some of the other movies Dad's seen or whatever.
Oh, okay. Well, so I looked at this. Joey Brown starred in 3 movies in 1942 alone. So if Bruce was seeing a new release, we don't totally know. It could have been one of 3 movies: Shut My Big Mouth, number 1, Joan of Ozark, or this movie called The Daring Young Man, which was released on October 8th, 1942, which is just a week or so before this letter. So not sure, and I tried to look for any of these movies on streaming, and they are not available. I kind of want to watch what Grandpa's watching, but so far, not been able to find Take a Letter, Darling, or Shut My Big Mouth. This is crazy.
Joey
these
Brown
are
was in
titles.
Some Like It Hot. Have you seen
Yes,
that? Okay.
well, I have not seen that one.
Okay.
That one's probably on streaming though, probably.
Oh,
It
yeah,
is.
that one
Yeah.
definitely should
It
see.
is.
But I did know that Wikipedia mentioned he was in that. That was his most famous one, probably, I guess. I don't know. But I thought it was funny. He didn't seem excited to see a Joey Brown movie, but he did. Maybe it helped that you could smoke in the front row. I don't know.
Probably.
And that P.S., Mrs. F.J. winning high honors at Bridge. I know nothing about Bridge.
No,
You were
but
just
it's-
telling me a little bit about it before we got on the.
But you're saying you think that's Lotta?
I
Mrs.
think
FJ?
so. Mrs. F.J. would be Mrs. Frank, right? And that's how the ledger would refer to women then, would be, Mrs. Frank J. McMahon or whatever. Did the whole family play Bridge? Was this just a Lotta thing, a female thing? Like, what was the...
I remember my mom having bridge parties.
I was going to say it's a female thing because they would rotate houses when we were kids.
Yeah. Yep.
Joe Ritzma, my mom, there was a group of like 10 or 12 ladies, and I remember them setting up card tables in
me
their
too.
living room.
Me too. I do too.
And I would stand and watch how they play. That game is way beyond. I never understood how you played bridge.
Okay.
It's betting cards, and
Our sister Marty's a very good bridge player, and her husband Paul. Just
Really?
Shout
Okay.
out, throw that in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so. Competitive.
So I don't know what high honors at Bridge means, though. Like, does that mean you play against each other? Like, if you did a big group? It's like a tournament, and then you win the tournament?
Oh yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And Marty and Paul, they talk about the levels that you can get to in bridge.
Oh,
like
there's
you get
levels?
to. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's what this is referring to,
Right.
the high honors at Bridge.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's important enough that'd be in the ledger.
Well,
But
lots
someone-
of things were in the ledger.
I know, lots of things are in the ledger.
Somebody went to somebody's house for dinner, right? Yeah, those
Oh, yeah.
those are in the ledger.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've been trying to Google what this last line means. Keep setting them, and I'll keep flying them.
Yep.
We have no idea. We keep trying to figure out what that could be referring to. Is it referring to bridge? Is it referring to bridge and flying?
Yeah,
Just
aviation.
flying? If anyone knows, please let us know. If you've heard this
Sounds
phrase
good.
before, keep
Sounds
setting them
good.
and I'll keep flying them.
Yeah.
But that was kind of cute. The other thing was in Lowell during the fall of 1942 was the big news of a giant scrap metal drive going on in the town. And Dale had actually mentioned this maybe way back in like episode 1 or 2 about the things that Lowell was doing during wartime. But this specifically was going on in October of this year. So it was all over the ledger. So every issue this month, the paper was trying to convince people to do their duty for the war and donate scrap metal. And the ledger even suggested melting down a statue of a cannon that was in Richards Park for scrap metal and for people to reuse their toothpaste tubes. It was like, bring your toothpaste tube to the pharmacy and refill it. I'm like, I mean, we talk about sacrifice, but I mean, refilling your toothpaste at the pharmacy, that
Yeah,
is
because
something
there's
else.
the phrase, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's impossible to put back. So yeah.
But I mean, I guess if you had a metal tube, I don't know, I'm just imagining this fountain of toothpaste that you like pull down, and I don't know. This seems crazy to me. But yeah, I mean, did anyone remember a cannon in Richards Park? Did they ever
No,
tear
I
it
don't
down?
remember that. So maybe they did melt it down.
Maybe they
I
did.
don't know.
I don't know. So, yeah, can you imagine? And anyway, the Ledger also reported that the McMahon family, came back from California from visiting Bruce. So that was reported in the Ledger. So
Yep.
I guess everything can get reported in 1940. And Bruce had something to say about it, though. He had something to say about the reporting of the trip in a letter home from October 2nd. So, Dad, why don't you read this excerpt in his own words?
I received the Ledger yesterday and read where the McMahons visited their son Bruce, who was a naval cadet in the Air Corps. Now, what in the hell is he doing as a naval cadet?
So again, Bruce did not write the word hell. That was me. But he wrote H-E-blank-L. So he pretty much wrote the word hell. But again, I do love his sense of humor. So the Ledger got it wrong. He's not a naval cadet,
No.
but he had to correct it for sure. All right. Well, we're going to finish up today with one final letter from Bruce from October 8th.
Thursday. Oh, go ahead. In his own words, right? I forgot. I know that's my cue. Sorry about that.
I always put it in here, and I did it.
Thursday. Dear folks, I received your letter last night, Mother, and one from Bern. He sure writes a swell letter. Plenty of news about the gang at home. Before I scribble anymore, I'll give you my excuse for this writing. I broke my finger, the one next to my little one. It's in a cast splint, and it's on my right hand. It keeps sliding along ahead of this pen, and it's a bit awkward. But don't worry, it's going to be okay, and I can keep right on flying. I'm excused from drill athletics, so I guess I'm not so bad off. I broke my finger playing softball. Got one right on the end of it. They x-rayed it and set it perfectly. I'm so glad your trip didn't tire you. Also, that you had such a swell time. Guess maybe we still have the same tastes, as witness to the way you like the sequoia. How I'd like to see the valley from our hill. I bet the trees are really colorful. That's one thing I miss out here, the seasons. Sure wish I could go out with Roger Byrne tomorrow and do a little hunting, regardless of how much game we brought back. Glad to hear Ed has a carrier's job. Good pay, nice work, and time to take on the boys for a game of golf now and then. Does Charlie know where he'll be sent? If it's Texas, he'll be in this core area. Might see him sometime. My finger, see, I've got an excuse now, is getting tired, so I'll close. All my love, your loving and grateful son, J. Bruce.
His first war injury, a broken finger playing softball. So, and once again, he mentions Charlie. So in our last episode, we weren't 100% sure who Charlie was. We thought we knew, but in this letter, the Charlie that Grandpa's referring to is drafted, so it couldn't be his own uncle, who would have been in his 60s at the time. So maybe it's not a family member.
No, I'm going to guess that it's the family friend Charlie Houseman, but that's just a guess.
Okay. Was he about Grandpa's age?
I don't even. I would. Yes, I would say yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would make more sense, that he would let him drive his car around from the last episode and maybe be drafted. So that makes sense. And I like how he's describing
Again.
Reservoir Hill and the colors
I
behind
know,
the
in
valley.
fall. Yeah, absolutely.
In the fall. Do you still see the colors
I
from
do.
the
I do. I get to see that valley. A few less trees, but yes. Yeah.
That's cool. I also found in the ledger from October 10th, 1942, that Margaret Allen, once again, Grandma's popping up, visited E.J. Doyle over the weekend. These two keep popping up in the ledger every now and then, so
They
they
were
clearly
fast
were
friends.
besties.
Yep.
The ledger reported that Margaret was a former teacher, so you remember she resigned, but is, quote, now employed in the compensation department of the bomber plant at Willow Run and lives at Ann Arbor. So she worked for the famous Willow Run bomber plant, not just any aviation plant, the aviation plant. So I don't know if compensation department means she probably wasn't a Rosie the Riveter or Riveter, but that's still, she worked with them. She worked right alongside with them.
Absolutely.
And we didn't know I didn't know this at all.
And it just
No, I
said
didn't
clerical in the article that I
Yeah.
wrote, the clerical.
So she must have been like payroll or something,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So there were tons of women that worked at Willow Run in all different capacities, not just the riveters, but yeah, doing clerical work or whatever it might be. The Henry Ford has a lot of pictures. I'll send you some, Dale, for our YouTube, but because it was all run by Henry Ford. But yeah, it's
Cool.
the famous bomber plant
Very cool.
that Grandma was at. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
that was kind of cool. So that's it. That's it for us today. A lot of talk about flying, a lot of talk about Merced, and next time we're going to get into some more of it because he is starting to do some of those more advanced maneuvers, as Dale mentioned. So thank you for listening to Letters Home. We hope you continue to listen as we go through Bruce's story. You can listen to Letters Home on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Thursday. The Lowell Historical Museum has digitized versions of Bruce's letters so you can read them in full, along with primary sources for most of the people, places, and events we've talked about here today, plus more. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. Thank you to Roger McNaughton for our podcast music and to WRWW 92.3 FM for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. Tune in or stream WRWW at lowellradio.org. See you next time.